Good afternoon everyone and welcome to the Governance, Audits and Standards Committee meeting. I'm Councillor Ian Holder, Chair of this committee. I'd like to draw your attention to the following housekeeping. If the continuous fire alarm sounds, please evacuate the room and public gallery by the stairwells. Do not attempt to use the lifts. Please assemble by the statue of Queen Victoria in Guildhall Square. In order to comply with the Guildhall Trust Fire Marshal regulations, if you have signed into the Guildhall, please remember to sign out when you leave the building after today's meeting. Live web streaming. May I draw everyone's attention to the fact that this meeting will be live streamed. Can I please remind all attendees to turn their microphones on to speak and off again once you've finished speaking. Members of the public are also permitted to record the meeting on the understanding that it neither disrupts the meeting nor records those stating explicitly that they do not wish to be recorded. Please be advised that the public seating area is not in view of the camera used to webcast this meeting. Please can I ask members and officers to introduce themselves, starting on my left.
Peter Bell, City Solicitor.
Councillor Russell Simpson.
Councillor Judith Smythe, St Jude Ward.
Councillor Susie Horton.
Councillor Stuart Brown.
Charlotte Smith, Assistant Director of Corporate Services.
Christine Thomas, Corporate Customer Service Manager.
Faith Stewart, Complaints and Customer Experience Officer.
Ken Nash, Strategy Unit.
Paul Somerset, Deputy Chief Internal Auditor.
Elizabeth Goodwin, Chief Internal Auditor.
Richard Webb, Deputy Director of Finance.
Helen Clem, Finance Manager, Technical Financial Planning.
James Harris, Senior Local Democracy Officer.
Thank you. Agenda item 1, apologies for absence. We're not aware of any apologies. So, item 2, declarations of interest. Do any members have any interest to declare in respect of the items to be considered at this meeting? No. I do. I have to declare that my wife is a personal advisor for the Children, Families and Education Directorate. Minutes of the meetings held on 9th of July 2025. Are members happy that I signed the previous minutes as an accurate record? Everyone happy? Thank you. Slight change around in the order. We've agreed that we're going to take item 6, Treasury Management Monitoring Report for the first quarter first, because Helen has to leave. So we'll head off.
Chair, I wasn't at I was at the meeting last time, but I don't remember this particular thing coming up on page 7 of the minutes. This is a question, really, sort of matters arising. At the top of the page, it says that other areas of audit focus which had an inherent risk, and one is the pension liability valuation. The reason I'm raising that is I'm on the, and maybe I do have an interest, I'm not sure. I'm on the Hampshire Pension Board representing employers like Portsmouth City Council. If there's something I need to know about the risk of that, could I perhaps arrange a meeting outside this meeting or understand why that's on the list? Because I'm representing employers on the Hampshire Pension Fund Board and have done so for 4 or 5 years. And I wasn't aware that there was any inherent risk in that.
Yes, happy for having a follow-up session to follow that matter up with you separately if you'd like.
Okay, it's just that I hadn't, if I'd known there were risks involved, I might have operated differently on the Hampshire Pension Fund Board.
Yeah, this is an item flagged by the external auditors as part of their audit risk planning, and so it's not necessarily a risk per se, but it's a risk for their audit perspective.
Oh, okay. If you could pop it into my office calendar, I'd be grateful to have a briefing. I am representing you. It is one of those jobs in the council you get given and nobody tells you what you're meant to do. But I think thought this was a time to just link the things that should be linked. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So, agenda item 6, Helen, do you want to introduce the report?
Thank you, Chair. So this is the Q1 Treasury Management Report. There's nothing in addition to add to the report which has already been circulated. The key highlights are that we haven't had any breaches as per our Treasury Management Policy. We're not taking out any new borrowing this quarter or planning to this year, though this is something that we are monitoring closely. And the rates for investment of our surplus cash are falling as well. Happy to take any questions if anyone has any.
Members, any questions?
Are there any particular risks or issues for us to consider around Treasury management arising from the possible local government review and reorganisation?
Currently, we're sort of starting that preparation and planning for the local government reorganisation, but there are no specific risks that we need to make the committee aware of today in relation to that.
People have mentioned our indebtedness as a possible thing that needs to be looked at in the light of the perhaps wide difference between us and the potential authorities we might be joining. Is that something you'll be looking at?
So the council's debt is primarily made up of outstanding loans, the majority of which relate to investments in commercial properties, which do generate an income for the city council. Currently, their currently income is in excess of borrowing costs by around £7 million per annum. The other borrowing includes the provision of homes for residents with borrowing costs met from council rents. And also the funding of some of the commercial investments, such as the Dunsbury Business Park International Port, which also generates income for the council. So that, I think that hopefully that answers the question. There's nothing specifically that concerns me in relation to that at this point.
That provides with me exactly the reassurance I wanted, and I think it's a good thing that this is recorded for the public to hear, because there are some misapprehensions, misunderstandings, lack of knowledge out there, and if anybody chose to listen, they could get that answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chair. And also on a very sort of similar reassurance vein, I regularly comment on this when we have this report come to the committee, so I just want to reiterate, obviously we're looking currently at being around 65% of our operational boundary, so the threshold that we say we are allowed to borrow up to or expect to borrow up to, we are smidgen over 65% of that. And as Richard mentions, that's not debts that we need to give back the money immediately. It's long-term investments which are offset by the money that they bring in. What I was going to ask was, do we have any early indications of any impact that November's budget might have on our Treasury management forecasts, or is it too early to tell?
It's too early to tell at this stage. We will probably have something that we could comment on at the next gas meeting in November.
Thank you. Any other members? No. Just a bit on with the LGR. Do we have any oversight or any indication of what debt is coming potentially with the councils that we may be merged with?
So the local government reorganisation is still at that early stage, and all of those points are being looked at as part of the business case and the report that will be coming forward to Cabinet.
So, no other questions? Okay. In that case, members, it's recommended that the Council's Treasury management activities have remained within the Treasury Management Policy 2025-2026 in the period up to 30th of June 2025, and the Treasury management indicators as at 30th of June 2025 set out in Appendix A be noted, and that members are reassured that things are being well managed. Is it approved? Thank you. Thank you. Afternoon, Councillor Gardner. Have you any interest to declare?
Afternoon, Chair. Apologies for my lateness. I was coming straight from another council meeting. Nothing to declare.
Thank you. We'll move on to agenda item 4, overview of Portsmouth City Council complaints, including local government and social care ombudsman complaints 2024-2025. Christine Thomas, Corporate Customer Services Manager, and Charlotte Smith, Assistant Director of Corporate Services, are in attendance. Would you like to introduce your report, please?
Yes, thank you very much. So the purpose of the report, it represents the annual review of complaints by the Local Government and Social Care Ombudsman for the year 2024-25 and provides a general overview of complaints received during this period. So the current complaint policy implemented on the 1st of November 2024 describes a two-stage process for managing complaints and specific target response times. Stage 1 complaints are classified as either straightforward or complex, with response times of 10 working days for straightforward and up to 20 working days for complex. In 2024-25, the Council managed 559 Stage 1 and Stage 2 complaints, and it's a decrease from the 653 complaints received in the previous year of 23-24. The most significant reduction occurred in the Housing, Neighbourhoods and Building Services Directorate, as the complaints regarding relating to the Council's activities as a landlord are now addressed under the Local Authority Housing Landlord Complaint Policy. Stage 1 to complaint response timescales have both improved compared to the previous year. Approximately 2/3 of the Stage 1 complaints were classified as straightforward, with the timescale reduced from 15 to 10 working days for these cases, and response rates have improved from 75% to 87% within that category, and complex cases achieved an 85% response rate within timescale. There's trends by directorate within section 5 of the report, with the highest volume of the complaints reported in services with the greatest level of frontline customer engagement. Specific trends, increases and decreases have also been explained further, with trends by subject and type broken down in section 6 of this report. To follow the LGSCO's best practice of handling complaints, a new addition to this report for the monitoring and reporting of service requests. A service request example for context includes a customer contacting complaints or the service directly asking to make a complaint as their bin collection was missed for the first time. This would not initially be treated as a complaint, as the service has not had the chance to rectify this as the initial service request. If the bin then continued to be missed, this would then become a complaint and would be noted as it was initially dealt with as a service request before coming a complaint. During this reporting period, 11 out of 176 service requests became complaints. The LGSCO complaint review, the LGSCO investigated 7 cases and upheld 5, with the Council successfully implementing recommendations on 100% of these cases. The report includes summaries of the upheld complaints by the LGSCO, detailing the issues, decisions and learnings from each of those cases. So in summary, the overall number of complaints handled within 24-25 reduced. The Complaints Officer continues to support directorates and meeting timescales, which has seen a significant improvement. The percentage of complaints escalated to Stage 2 remains low, indicating the effectiveness of our complaint process. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you. It's good to see that the number of complaints are down, and also notice that the number of compliments have gone up. It's quite a reassuring report. Members, and Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chair. Just so that I'm understanding the process, so when we're looking at the Stage 1, Stage 2 and total, is it the case that the Stage 2s were initially Stage 1s and then progressed? Right, okay, super. Again, I'd like to echo the Chair's comments about the number of compliments increasing being a fantastic thing as well. The slight oddity, I think, there, where obviously we were talking about the areas that have high numbers of customer service facing ones having large numbers of complaints, but I think probably worth pointing out the significant decrease in the complaints in housing, neighbourhood and building services.
Yeah, so within the housing, neighbourhoods and building services, previous years, all complaints linked to landlords were also included within our policy. But from April of 2024, that was removed, and there's a specific policy for those complaints now.
Do we have any like-for-like data from previous years? So, like previous years, but without the landlord's complaints, so we can get a rough estimate of what the like-for-like would be?
It's something we can find.
Yeah. If you wouldn't mind, that'd be great.
Yeah, of course.
Just so that we know what the benchmark is.
Yeah, of course.
Thanks.
That can be provided.
Thank you, Councillor Simpson.
Yeah, I'm under economy, transport and planning. It's no surprise, obviously, most of it is planning complaints. And obviously it mentions about, it mentions in some report some of the specifics, but of the Stage 2 of 21, I'm guessing they're all planning as well for each Stage 2? Or was there a further breakdown on that?
Again, that is something we can provide,
Yeah.
because that would also be the economy, transport and other departments involved. But I can give you a percentage of how many of them were complaints for planning.
Yeah, because obviously there's no mention of economy and transport. It's mostly just sticks around. Well, sorry, it does, but I mean it's very, very brief. Whereas the planning has a little bit more depth of specific places. I'd be quite curious to know if that 21 that went to stage 2 was mostly planning.
Okay.
Please.
Yeah,
Thank
of course.
You. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, any other questions? No. In that case, members, it's recommended that the committee notes the content of the report. Is the report noted? Thank you. Next item, item 5 on the agenda, draft annual governance statement. Kelly Nash, Corporate Performance Manager, is in attendance. Would you like to introduce the report, please?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so the annual governance statement, obviously members of the committee will be familiar with this document that comes every year, sets out that our processes and procedures are in accordance with the SIPFA framework and gives us assurance that our overall control framework works for the organisation. Attached as Appendix 1 is the draft statement itself, which sets out our general framework and then highlights at the back both the internal auditor's annual opinion and also those areas of governance exposure that we have noted and some of the actions that we are taking to address those over the coming year. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Have there been any major changes since the last report?
There haven't been any changes to the framework that we respond to. What we have updated in particular is the section around our communication and consultation with customers, simply to bring that up to date with customer practice. So that is a different section to what has been seen before, but I don't think anything that members wouldn't recognise as the way that we work. In terms of updating the governance issues, again, they've been brought up to date with the things that are most present, I suppose, in our world now. And the thing that we will particularly notice is obviously the reference to the impact of devolution and local government reorganisation in the coming period. Obviously, some of those implications yet to work through, but absolutely worth flagging at this point in the process.
Thank you. Members, any questions? Councillor Smythe.
You'll be pleased to hear I'm not going to ask a question about outcomes this time. I think it is actually slightly better on that, so thank you. I want to make a comment about page 45. And it may have more to do with the Council's mission, overall mission, or it may be that the report needs to be updated a little bit, but it certainly will be something I'd want to see in next year's report, even if there aren't changes to this one agreed. I don't think we have a clear enough message in this about excuse me, frog in the throat, carbon reduction and about sustainability. The green policy, the comments about the green making our streets, roads, homes and public space safer, cleaner and greener. There are references to being green, looking after parks nicely, but there's no reference to the need for us to monitor the effect on the city's carbon footprint, either the city council itself, where a lot has been done, or the wider city, our contribution to reducing carbon. And in particular, we don't, for example, talk about air quality and the importance of that for health and contributing to a lower carbon situation. It just felt to me that it hadn't quite been updated to reflect that we have declared a climate emergency and that we are concerned about that. Just, I mean, it's a suggestion for next time as much as anything else. The only other thing I'll comment on something else in a minute.
Yeah, just in respect of that, that particular paragraph represents the language that is in the current corporate plan. At such a point that the corporate plan is updated, then the annual governance statement would reflect the language of that updated corporate plan. So I suppose not really to reflect whether the merit or otherwise of the comments, but this actually reflects the document that has been adopted by the local authority.
I guess that was the case, in fact, in referred to that at the beginning of my comments. It doesn't actually say which when that these priorities were agreed in this report, which I would have thought would have been useful.
Very happy to update that and say that it was adopted in 2024 through to 2026.
Thank you. I think that would be helpful because I would have expected, therefore, to have seen more in about carbon reduction. Can I have a second point. I mean, I think the comments you make about adult social care, children's social care, representing in excess of 50% of all controllable spend. I think in a way in this report I'd like to see a little bit more about that, because there are. I realise this is not a very granular report, but in general, I wonder if it's something we might want to look at here, if they haven't looked at it in the relevant cabinet committees. There is an enormous cost arising from a very small number of looked after children, and of course the overall pool of looked after children, and it might be something that you'd want us to.
I don't know. I would have thought that would be
in
discussed with the relevant committees. With sort of more overview of it being
I just
managed
asked
and discussed.
the question of whether it is. It's a huge amount of money going on very few children, and there are ways of dealing with that, which I'd like to be reassured the council are using.
Would that be something that audit would cover? Sorry, drop you in.
It can be audited. I've participated elsewhere in audits of this.
I think if internal audit were to pick up on it, we would need to probably bottom out where and what we would be adding to the equation to consider any review for it. But it's probably not that straightforward.
I'm sure it's not.
Thank you. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chair. Kelly, going back to the local government reorganisation thread, because obviously that is a biggie in terms of governance over the next few years. We obviously don't yet know what form the new local authorities are going to take, but obviously there are some good indications of who we might end up with. Has there been any preliminary work done either in-house or in conjunction with neighbouring local authorities to pass our different governance structures together and see what sort of combined governance structure we might end up with? Because I'm assuming that, you know, as Portsmouth councillors, we want our governance structures to be prevalent. As Havant councillors, they'll want theirs. Fareham might want theirs, etc., etc. And we're going to have to sort of square the circles and figure out whose governance procedures take precedence. Is there any contingency planning or conversations happening of that ilk?
So I think in response to that, obviously the particular changes that are, I suppose, strategic concerns set out in the report, so page 54 picks up those particular implications. At the moment, in terms of those discussions, as you say, it's really early days, and actually we don't yet know exactly what the form of that will take. I think what you get assurance of is that as that process proceeds, that absolutely will take place. And I suppose it's worth saying that what we wouldn't be doing is almost just replicating. You know, it will be a new organisation with different ways of carrying out the functions that will be undertaken, and you're absolutely right, there'll be a need to look at what the governance structures underpinning that look like, but that's not work that's undertaken at the moment because we're very early in the process, but a really important point to capture.
And I would assume that this committee and our equivalents on any other councils that we do end up merging with would probably have a big role to play in figuring out which bits of which documents get carried over.
Will absolutely defer to my monitoring officer and democratic services colleagues, but I would absolutely expect the governance audit and standards will have an important role in future constitution development.
Thank you. Members, any other questions?
It's a really interesting and good report.
Yeah, agree. Thank you. Members, it's recommended that the committee notes and comments on the draft annual governance statement. Is the report and comments made by the committee noted? Thank you. So we'll move on to item 7, the internal audit performance.
I think we could be reassured rather than noting. I don't like noting things in the desk. It looks like we haven't really read it. It looks like we don't know what we're talking about.
Yeah, we can put that with reassured. I think we all are reassured. Noted and reassured. Item 7, Internal Audit Performance Status Report on the 1st of September 2025. Elizabeth Goodwin, Chief Internal Auditor, and Paul Somerset, Deputy Chief Internal Auditor, are in attendance to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair. So this is our standard audit progress report that we bring to this committee You will see on page 77 the progress we've made against the audit plan. We are on course to complete the audit plan by the end of the year to enable us to give our annual audit opinion. Moving on to page 79 of your pack, there has been some changes to the audit plan. We've outlined them there. Apologies for the error where we say it's 6 grants. There is 8 grants that have been added for those that added them up, so that will be rectified. And then towards the tail end of the report, as usual, is the results of the audits we've completed since the last meeting. There was one outstanding from the 24-25 plan and the rest of it from the 25-26. As always, happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Councillor Smythe.
This is purely a factual question because these have been printed out in black and white. On page 3 of the audit plan progress, the internal audit progress report, we've got a nice little pie diagram and we can't tell what it refers to what.
Apologies, we do try to use patterns to stop that from occurring, but we will go back and look at how we can make those patterns a bit clearer so if it works in black and white as well.
Well, I've just got, I mean, if you could explain it, it would be useful because mine's now patterned with 2 question marks and a 30%, which is a guess I made.
He's got a colour on it.
No, I was just my daughter's colouring in pencil.
So the main section at the bottom, 54%, is work that hasn't started yet. Then you have 16%, which is the portion on the left-hand side of the pie chart, which is field work, so that work is underway. And then the top 2 sections, 14% and 16%, the 16% is what's completed and 14% is in draft report stage.
Thank you. Members?
Thank you very much. Perhaps if we if we could have patterns in the future, that would be good, or colours or something.
Yeah, no problem. There are some patterns there, but they're clearly not defined enough, so we'll reevaluate.
Or we could just cope with a table, but it is misleading. Thank you.
Members, any questions on the report? No questions? Page, I think it's page 87 of the report, page 13 of your report, about the risk management executive. It says, whilst directorates manage risks within their areas, high-risk exceptions were raised relating to outdated, inconsistently applied risk management, gaps in alignment, strategic risk register, visibility, inconsistent operational risk practices across service areas. That sounds quite a serious risk.
I'm more than happy to defer to Kelly, who can talk about that in a bit more detail.
Yeah, so obviously work really closely with all colleagues and audit on this particular audit. It was a really helpful one in as much as it looked at the different practices across the organisation in terms of risk management. What it found was that there were no concerns in respect to the individual directorate practices and there were no huge areas of exposure found. What it did find is that there are different practices that take place in the different areas of the organisation, and while that's not necessarily unsurprising, you would expect, wouldn't you, a different form of risk management to be taking place in, say, engineers to social care. What that does do is mean that actually do we have consistency when we bring it all together and take an overall picture of what our risk management frameworks look like. So that's the piece of work that we're now doing, is to make sure that our risk management policy reflects where it needs to difference and where it needs to actually bringing things together and making them a bit more consistent. And actually, I believe, James will correct me if I'm wrong, but scheduled to your next meeting, we'll actually bring back a revised risk management policy to respond to that and tidy up some of those elements. So I think probably assurance to be given that we're not sitting here and saying there are problems necessarily identified in the risk management framework. What we have I think identified is there are ways that we could bring it together in a way that gives better visibility and more consistency in that tracking across.
Thank you. Judith?
I'd just like to draw attention to page 9 of the internal audit progress report. We have here, which is one of the reasons I raised the matter earlier on, the commissioning of placements by contract by the Director of Children, Families and Education is reporting 6 high risks, and the six exceptions raised here, 6 high risk exceptions it says here in the commissioning of placements, which just reinforces my feeling that if it's not being done in the children's spokesman's cabinet committee, we need to have a look at it. There are some ways to reduce that. I used to work in across the country on the purchasing of places for high risk children who are being looked after, and there are some things that might be worth discussing with a range of people who've got other experiences.
Thank you.
But
Councillor
I mean, that's by far
Chair,
the worst
as a
one here.
previous cabinet member, I can say it absolutely is dealt with within. There have been some papers, and I believe also it went to scrutiny if you're looking at value for money around those high cost placements. So I'm sure that that information is available and also challenged. And also, only because I've promised myself I will pick up on language when I'm getting it wrong. In Portsmouth, we don't actually call them looked after children, we call them children we care for. So I just thought I'd share that.
That's true, children we care for. Yes, well, I enjoyed being on your cabinet about these things, but I'm not up to date with it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chair. Just to say, I think it's fair to say, Elizabeth, isn't it, that we're still fairly early in the life cycle of this audit. It runs to the end of the municipal year, but obviously I am very reassured that we do have a plan in place that runs through till next May and that progress is being made. I think the fact that we're, 3 months in, give or take, 3 or 4 months in, and we've got maybe about a quarter of the work done in terms of completed and started. So I think that's good progress towards getting the audits done to schedule.
Switch on. Members, it's recommended that the Governance, Audits and Standards Committee notes their reassurance that the audit performance for 2025-2026 to the 1st of September 2025. Members? Thank you. In that case, thank you, members. That concludes the business on the agenda for this meeting. I thank you for your attendance and close the meeting at 17.